Bonjour, bonsoir. Dear friends, you are so fortunate today. As much as I am, we have Ralph and Lahni DeAmicis, plural because they're the best. And they come as a pair of a great talent. We're very fortunate in the wine country. They started an incredible business that provides the best stores ever and the best experiences throughout the wine country. But beyond that, they are writers, and they're writers of some of the most intriguing books. One, you all need to have them. It's about touring the wine country. And as well, it is about what we all need to learn is about orientation, energy, meaning feng shui. We'll talk a lot about this, as well as the calendar. And we will learn from them how to look at the calendar, how to think about the calendar, how to utilize the calendar to our advantage, because the calendar has a cycle that obviously encompasses the energy that is as well captured within us. So dear friends, I don't want to wait any longer, but continue our ritual. Listen to this. Woo! Bonjour, bonjour. They speak combined around 10 languages, so we could say santé in how many languages? Let's do it. Voilà. Santé, salute,
Prosit.
prosit zum Wohl.
Zum Wohl.
In Portuguese?
I don't know.
Well, is there anything you don't know in Portuguese? Fortuna.
Boa fortuna.
Boa
I
fortuna.
love you using the lip glasses. Those are so perfect for sparkling.
Well, for sure. So, first and foremost, you live together, you work together, you both have beautiful blue eyes. How do you make that happen? How do you make it work for the last 20 plus years?
Well, first of all, it took 3 tries.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the third time, it
Right,
kind of
temperature
stuck.
arm, yes.
And I have to say that astrology played a big part in our meeting because we met at an astrological conference that was a great translation project. Now that we're talking about all these languages, it was a time when some of the greatest astrologers in the world were retranslating all the oldest text about astrology from the Latin, from the Greek, from the Sanskrit, from the Hebrew, and realized they had mistranslated much of it. And it turned the astrological world on its head. And we met at that conference, and it was, as they say, history.
At the first meeting, and I saw her across the room. She was on the far side, had very long blonde hair, and I thought, "There's no way she's here by herself. There's no way she can somehow." And then we got to the first break, and I realized she was. And we all had badges on, and on the badges we had not only our names but our sun, moon, and our rising. So at least you could identify people. And I went over, so we were meant to introduce ourselves, obviously, right? So I went over and I introduced myself.
With a click of the heels.
Unintentional.
I mean,
unintentional.
really.
So what is you both of your signs?
I'm a Scorpio
Yes.
with a Taurus moon, born exactly at the full moon, to the degree. We see both sides of everything.
And
It's a good thing and a bad thing. And I have
Yeah.
Capricorn rising, so I have organization down to a sickness.
Very true. Very true. And I'm a Virgo with a Scorpio moon.
Ooh.
So my moon latches very nicely with her
moon.
sun. And then I have Leo rising. So one of the reasons I tend to be the noisier one.
And when you first met through the signs,
Yes.
besides the blue eyes clicking and obviously noticing those gorgeous blonde hair and being charmed immediately, which I can understand why, did you feel immediately a connection through the astrological signs, the ascendant and the planets?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It was.
With sun moon is sort of the classic perfect connection. There's other things that have to go on between charts to show long-term aspects to a relationship, and that's if the Saturn makes a good aspect to one of the planets in the person's chart. But that sun moon is just an immediate, like you look across the room, you know, that's the sun moon opposition and the sun moon together just it's kind of the perfect romantic.
Even among friends too. A lot of times because you reflect each other so easily, and it's important to have people reflect you back to yourself so you can see what's going on.
Hey, how long did it take for the first kiss?
Oh, it took quite a while.
You seem to be a fast mover. Wow.
It took quite a while, though. We did spend the next 3 days of the conference together, but it was really a couple of months because I was running a business at the time. I come from a big family business. I'm also the youngest of the big family business. I had 2 young children at the time. I was ridiculously busy. So it took almost 2 months before our first date.
That is the excuse he kept telling me. And I kept saying, really? Really? You can't. But it was 6 weeks. It was 6 weeks until our first
Which is pretty quick.
date.
Yeah,
But
in many ways.
he was mulling over the benefit of a long distance romance because he had to drive an hour and 15 minutes.
I was north of Princeton. She was south of Princeton, Philadelphia.
Right. What a big deal!
Yeah, I know. But that got wiped away real fast.
So now, do you feel it was meant to happen? Give us your sense, as we're going to dive into your fabulous books, of destiny. Do you feel it was fate that was pre-organized thanks to all the astrological alignments?
Well, if I can tell you another quick story, very shortly after we met, we attended another conference in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And now dear friend of ours, Mark Seltman, who is an astropalmist, was giving a talk on astropalmistry.
Yeah.
And there was an older couple, a little bit older than us. And afterwards, Mark was reading everybody's palms, and they went up to have their palms read. And she looked over her shoulder at me and she said, I just want to be like them because they're obviously together for a very long time. Well, we were together for 3 months or something like that. And when we said that, he dropped their palms like a hot potato and said, I want to read yours. So he read my palm and he was hemming and hawing, and he hadn't been at a loss for words for anybody else. And I said, would it help if I tell you I'm left-handed? Oh, yes, you've worked out a lot of things in your life, haven't you? And so then he said, what you really have to guard against is viewing him as your salvation. And then he said, I'll look at your hands. And he looked at his hands, and I walked away, and I'm trying to process this stuff. He's looking at his hands. He comes back. He takes my hands. He looks at his hands. He says, I'm sorry. He is your salvation.
Thank you so much for sharing. So then the rest is history, obviously. But now tell us a little bit about those books that are next to you, because it's fascinating. Give us how you got further, because you both manage multiple businesses, and that's going to show to all of us that we could do many things with great success as you are. Well, maybe that's the one you want to start with. Yes.
Well, the reason I want to start with this one is because this is the one that actually was the catalyst to bring us out here into wine country.
Yes.
We were living in Philadelphia. We had written 15 books on natural health, on feng shui, and we wanted to add. We had a 10-year plan to move to California. We were waiting for his son, the youngest of our 5, to graduate high school. We were moving to California because we had been invited to speak at a feng shui conference in Monterey, and we just fell in love with California.
Of course.
So
who wouldn't?
Yeah, really.
We had written this book, Feng Shui and the Tango. The original title
was... The Dance of Design.
The original title was Feng Shui and the Tango in 12 Easy Lessons, a practical guide to romance.
Yeah.
But this was a newer edition of it. And
it came out of our lectures and our classes.
Right. So we wanted to add something to this design series about the wineries, the buildings, the history, the terroir here, and what makes California so special that 2 astrologers want to move 3,000 miles to live here.
That's right. I was fascinated because I had grown up in a factory family, and I had been the kid who was sent out to all the other companies for years. So I'd been in thousands of buildings, and factories and workshops and everything else. And I was trained as a designer, as an ergonomic designer and as an artist. So I would see these wineries, and I was thinking, these are the most remarkable factories I've ever seen in my life. They're incredible. They're elegant. They're spacious. They totally work, and yet there's this history of them going back to the 1800s,
That's right.
which are the most amazing ones, the ones from Hero McIntyre. And I said, we have to write about theirs. There's just too much going on here. And so that was part of it. It was like a magnet. I was just like, we have to go there and look at these buildings.
I think the funny part was that when we started to do the research, and we met a lot of winemakers and winery owners, and he later met some tour guides and things. But when he took a job driving tours for a wine tour company, he said, "This is the first time I'm getting paid to do research."
I love it. So you decided, well, tell us more about the book though, because there's so much great content in it, and why should everybody get it and read it?
Well, additionally, and I don't want to put on too many hats here, but we're naturopathic physicians, both of us.
Yes.
And so a lot of what we do in astrology is health astrology, and then we're naturopaths. And then we would send people back into their home environments, and they'd come back to us as sick as they were before, because the environment was creating problems for them.
That's right.
And when you realize that you can manipulate the energy to support what you want to do in the space and support the level of health that you want to have, and to mitigate things that are outside that are causing problems for you, it's a very powerful tool for people to continue their growth.
Right.
And so we started to teach a certification program on the East Coast. We certified maybe a couple hundred feng shui practitioners over a course of several years. And we also helped to mentor people through their naturopathic doctorate degrees, because we feel like doing this one-on-one, although we still consult, doing it one-on-one is very gratifying.
Yes.
But it's more gratifying if you teach people how to do this, and they can teach more people.
Maybe it would be interesting for everyone to hear your definition of feng shui, because I'm very much into it, and I think it's so essential and important, from the position of your bed to the dining room table.
Absolutely.
To the energy that you as an individual can, through your body language as well, display and communicate. Right. So maybe you want to give us a definition of why it's so important too.
Well, and as you talk about, as we were talking about the fact that, it's important to have fun in wine country.
Yes.
One of the most fun projects that we did was working with a builder who wanted to make sure that all of the houses that he was building had a good flow and a good proper feng shui. But the best thing we did for him was figure out his personal direction so that he would win when he would go to the casino. So he would take a little compass with him, and so
it worked very well for him.
But it also worked for positioning his desk to be in a position of power. So he said, you should position the people's desks so that they win all their deals and do all their things in the way that they want to do. And then once you find their position, we should nail that desk down so it can't be moved.
Well, like for instance, we're consulting in South America and Colombia, and we went into a sales room, and they did pharmaceuticals for animals, and everyone was facing west. Well, west is the direction of where the sun goes down. Yeah, it's always about partnerships. Well, it means that any negotiation is going to take a long time. But salespeople, if they say, "Hi, my name is Ralph. Can I sell you something?" You have to encounter people all the time. We just turned all the desks to the east, and as soon as they did that, everything picked up, because east is where things begin. That's right. And you find that people who are great salespeople have a lot of planets in the eastern horizon. Yes. They naturally gravitate towards the east. They just like that energy. But feng shui to me is about, how does the energy of the space affect the people, and that within homes, usually the most important energy are the people's energies, because we radiate so much energy, and we create the pattern. We used to say to people, when we come by your house, realize there's going to be no secrets, because we can see how you placed everything. We know what's going on in your life. If we go in and everything's on the left side, but there's nothing on the right side, the partnership side, we know you're doing nothing for your partnerships, but you're all focused on you. Yeah. Or vice versa. I remember we went in one place and everything was in the front of the room, where the career section, there was nothing in the back. They were so focused on their career, they couldn't understand why their personal life wasn't doing anything. Well, you're not investing energy there. That's right. And then there's a lot of our work in naturopathic work is about environmental health. Because with so many new building materials, they can be so toxic, but also all the electricity we surround ourselves with. And it consumes, minerals out of the body. So it's a complicated subject, but we still consult in it. It's
You still do
Oh,
it.
we still
Well, and
consult.
feng shui literally means wind and water.
Right.
And this is
Yeah.
really the Asian perspective. And every culture has had their version of feng shui. Indian has Vastu Shastra. Native Americans have medicine wheel. In Europe, it was called geomancy.
Right.
And so it's recognizing that energy on earth flows in a particular way. And it can you can either work against it or you can work with it. But we did something, and this is Ralph's beautiful artwork here. We did something that took the 8-sided feng shui
Wow. Let's show
bagua.
to our friends.
The
Look at
bagua is 8-sided, and we turned it into the 12 places of the Western zodiac.
Aha.
Because in the Western world, we want all the details.
Deals, home, passion,
Yeah.
caring, partners
Yeah.
with love,
Yeah.
power, luck, career, income, spirits, self-image, assets, and deals.
Yes.
Look at this. Amazing.
Well, the thing that's funny from the Asian to us, many of the Asian believers believed that the far right-hand corner was the area of like love and marriage. So they all focused on there. And then in the right-hand section, they would put the altar. And all of them were single. Everyone we knew, none of them were married. And we had to say to them, no, the right-hand corner, that's the creative section. That's the heart. That's where, it's passionate. The middle of the right-hand corner is where you sign on the dotted line that says, if we're going to do this together legally. That's partnership. Because
That's
it's,
right.
it's the meeting of the two families. It's not just you and her. It's the meeting of the two families. It's the legal crossing into the social world. Because it, works clockwise. You know this when you're putting your vortexes
for
in front
sure.
of Buena Vista.
Absolutely.
The problems of vortexes. I teach people all the time about, the winemaking trick about
Swirling.
counterclockwise and
For
clockwise.
sure.
To counterclockwise to
You
make
create
the barrel
energy and
flavors.
then you create chaos.
Yeah, but to bring the barrel flavors up to the surface.
For
'cause
sure.
They're wood. Of course they're going to float.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
suddenly they were amazed. I says, well, it's a living substance.
It's hard to imagine for any one of us, dear friends, not to have read a lot about feng shui. So I highly recommend, obviously we're going to offer for sale, I hope you'll allow us to have Ralph and Lahni DeAmicis book, because this is so important to understand the basics of feng shui. And as you said, there's so many obvious things
Yes.
that happen not only in the organization of your house, but even your life. Feng shui is materialistic and as well, abstract in that sense as far as how you read it.
And you program your space.
Yes.
And then your space programs you.
That's
So
right.
it's a two-way street. And the reason for the title is that you can read about feng shui, but unless you're out there dancing on the dance floor, you're not going to know how it really feels.
So talking about the dance floor, I'm going to ask you, by the way, to tell me what you think about this wine. And finish it, because we need
It's lovely.
we need to move into the reds and the tarot.
Okay.
And I do have to say one other thing about feng shui too. When the Raymonds had this property out here,
Yes.
Dave had put things under the ground to the west, the area
Yes.
of partnership, but they never used it.
Yeah.
Right. And then when they went into financial relationships, when you took it over, you took that out and you put the gardens out
For
there.
sure.
And the number of partnerships that you've been able to make within the
For
valley
sure. Yes.
are representative of that.
Thank
See,
you.
this is how we talk about
Thank
our
you
wine
for
friends.
explaining, because I do go into this direction sometimes, but I realize, it's an abstract world, and a lot of people think often that you're totally out there. And sometimes, what drug is he taking? Or is it marijuana or something else? Where the only addiction I have is obviously wine, needless to
Right,
say.
yes.
Addiction as a friend. But I think it's so important to do things, as you said, with intentions
Exactly.
and to program your intentions. I use a lot of pendulum, quartz energy,
Yes,
but there's a lot of other techniques I use. And, I'm a student of geomancy. You use the term. This is what we use as a term in Europe and Eastern Europe. And I think it's very exciting when you start to really understand energy flow, frequency, vibration,
Exactly.
and, flows and knots and direction. you become so much aware more
Mm.
of people and as well sense of place. And thank you for noticing opening to the west and
Oh.
why the west and so
Well, you did that also in Deloche.
for sure.
You went from having an eastern-facing door, which was
That's
very
right.
individualistic in the small tasting room, and then you moved to the back house where all of a sudden it faces towards the south, I guess really the southeast. It's opening and welcoming, and you've gone deeper into the property now, so now they understand more of the depth of
Thank you
of
for
the winery.
noticing.
Yeah, it's really, it was amazing transformation.
And I cannot wait when you'll be able to come to Elizabeth Spencer and
Oh.
and the whole Rutherford Cross estate that we're building there, because we're going to have a lot of orientation ideas, octagonal orientations as well,
Interesting.
and a lot of secret symbols that a lot of people feel. They don't necessarily understand what that is, but they just feel comfortable.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that you just hit on something that we said to our students and our clients all the time. If it feels right, it is right. And if it doesn't feel right, it will never be right.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you don't let your brain lie to yourself. If it doesn't feel right, it's not going to get any better.
And about this wine, what's the vintage?
Well, this is a Brut Crémant de Bourgogne, so méthode champenoise. It would be probably 2018.
It's beautiful.
Chardonnay Pinot Noir blend.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
If you had to be lunar, what would you say?
oh, it's almost Taurian, but with a little bit of Gemini in there because it's got a beautiful sizzle to it, but it's got a wonderfully satisfying
Ooh, it's
foundation.
Gemini.
Yeah. A little bit of,
So I have twins. The twins, as you're a twin, and you have twins.
And I have twins.
That's quite amazing. The twins enjoyed this wine at birth. And to this day, Grace Antoinette remembers and recognizes this wine as well. She had 21 and Honoré Josephine had 69, which is the Pinot Noir, sparkling. And it's funny because she is a true Gemini, acting as a Gemini. So the fact that you use that word to define it.
Nice.
Oh yes, yeah, you can really see the quickness of it. It's really very quick on the palate, but it's got a wonderful, satisfying foundation to it. So
Thank you. Well, Dylan was very insightful into bringing tarot to our life, which introduces the planetary calendar, maybe in many ways, because this is a great one. I love La Lune, the moon. Very thoughtful, Mr. Elliot, who is still a bachelor, by the way, so maybe we can help him through the moon to find multiple moons. He's not looking just for one. So he's not looking into, like Patrick, being, encompassed by a wife and a child.
And this is the difference between the moon and Venus.
Yes.
Because once Venus gets her hooks into you, that's it. It's all over.
Moon is changeable. Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So we got to be careful of Venus if we don't want that, right, Dylan? You heard that? So we're having a Napa Valley Cabernet. I'm very excited about this wine. This was recently released as the tarot. So in a case, you get 12 different tarot cards as a label. This one happens to be the moon. And this is the old arcane.
Yes.
Out of 26 arcanes, this is one of them called the moon, which I believe is so exciting that you've written your own calendar. And I want to thank you for offering it to us, because over the last several years, you were so kind to send it and so grateful of it. And this is one of the reasons why we're here. We'll talk about Wine Country shortly, but before you moved, you had written 15 books.
But before we get into that, I have to say, you have to realize, I love what you've done with the buildings.
Thank you.
I'm a great admirer of buildings, obviously, but what you did with Buena Vista alone, the way you restored it was remarkable. The Count would have loved it. He would have loved it. And I had to say thank you somehow. And that's why I brought you the calendars.
Well, you're so kind. Thank you so
much. And I have
much.
a sweet spot in my heart for the Count because my father was Hungarian.
Yes. So lots of.
And I'm sure he was a Count as well.
And my given name is Ilona.
Yes.
So I do use the Hungarian label more than I do the German label.
Like the Ilona de Gagarin, our famous princess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So you've been every year now publishing the calendar.
Well, we started publishing it in 2017 when my
Yeah.
daughter could no longer publish it, but the calendar was started in 1949.
It's the second oldest in the country.
And we, as
Wow.
astrologers, we used it as a professional tool. And then in, I guess it was 1996, when I received the calendar, it came with a note that the originator of the calendar had passed away, and that was going to be the last issue of
Wow.
the calendar. My daughter, who is not an astrologer, was appalled, and she bought the rights to publish the calendar. But not being an astrologer, she needed us to author
Yes.
the calendar. So we did that
Wow.
until 2017. And then in 2017, she could no longer take care of the demands of the calendar, and she was going to give it up. And so we saved it from the fire a second time and
Wow.
brought it into our publishing catalog. So it really is a labor of love to us because it is the most work-intensive book,
Oh,
and it's all for 1 year. So,
but every year we get to tinker with it and keep improving it. So that's the fun parts. Every year
Yeah,
we keep
once-
improving the ergonomics, or we move things around, and we make sections bigger or
and
smaller.
add things to it to make it more
Yeah.
worthwhile. And there was never a
day
day
planner.
planner, and
That's
that's what
right.
we brought with you today. But we have the wall calendar, and we have a little pocket calendar, and we have a digital version for the cell phone. But
Really?
And this is this was recommended by the bookstores. They said, "Oh, day planners are the big sellers." I said, "Okay, it's taken off like crazy."
Wow,
Yeah, it's very
congratulations.
nice.
So tell us about why should everybody get interested into the lunar calendar?
If you drink wine,
Well, if you drink wine, but no, for sure.
but everyone should drink wine. But that's besides the point.
That's no, but you're right. If you
I'm
drink
Italian on
wine,
both sides. Everyone should drink wine. It's good for the health. But the thing about it is that, like from biodynamics, they say that on the fire days and the air days, the wines taste different because it goes more into the air. I've noticed this.
yeah, for
And
sure.
when I plan tours, I will say to people, okay, this is a great day for wine. When it's the moon and the water days, I say, well, the water and the earth days, I say, well, we're going to focus on other things. I don't tell them it's not a good day,
Mhm.
but I do make them swirl more. For instance, I make
Yeah.
them take more time. I make them slow the tasting down so the wines can keep opening. But it really makes a big difference. Besides the fact that you should know, like, for instance, we're working on the New Year's forecast for 2023. This is when we do 2023. So I have no idea what year it is. But I'm putting in, like, in the first section, well, these are when the eclipses are. Make sure you plan around these periods, because
That's
this, in the later one, I think, is what's called the Great American Eclipse, because it's going to pass right over the United
That's right.
States. So people are going to feel, we had a big one like that, I think, in 2015, and the United States really got hit in a bunch of different ways after that. So, it's a big eclipse. So plan around. Don't plan weddings like during it, for instance. Try to avoid that. I put in, I give my ideas in terms of when Mercury is retrograde, because even though all the planets go retrograde, except the sun and the moon, Mercury hits us personally.
Yeah,
because
for
it's all
sure.
like the stuff we do with our hands and our ideas and things like that.
well, and interestingly, NASA reports that they have more problems with their communication satellites
Yeah,
during Mercury retrograde than at any other time of year.
that's right.
So
I've
even
heard
if
that
that's-
recently
Yeah,
as well.
Even if that's the only thing you want to find out in this, calendar, is what those periods are,
Right.
because Mercury goes retrograde for 3 weeks at a time,
Yes.
3 times a year. And it's a time when you should go back and review things, but it's
Yes.
not a time to do a big mailing, any kind of communications
Buy a
outreach,
phone.
buy new phone systems or telephones, all those
And
things
we've tried all these
come back
things.
at
I mean, they
you.
don't work.
So
But it
tell
tells you
us
where
about
the
this
moon is every day.
amazing tool. If you could define it for us as a tool, because I believe it's not just something to read, it's something to understand, to utilize, to understand the rhythm of the world around us that has a greater impact on us than anything else.
I think one of the great things about it, and this was set up by the original founder of it, was he made it kind of ergonomic. He basically, we have certain aspects, angles, just like with between people. You have certain people you can really cooperate with easily. It's just seamless. And other people who you really have to work at that relationship. You butt heads. And there's difference between the very supportive aspects between the planets and the challenging ones. The challenging ones get stuff done. You have to have them if you want to get anything done. But, it's helpful to understand them. Well, what he did was he took the very supportive ones and he put them on the high side
Yes.
of each day block, and he put the challenging ones below.
That's right.
So people can look at all the data, but putting it visually, so it's up or down, it tells them very quickly, it's this good at this a day. Like, for instance, we put the aspects of the moon over and above and below the date. Well, that's because the lunar aspects happen so fast. It's like mom. Mom in the house is always moving around. And so the lunar aspects happen like that. The kids come in at different times and talk with mom, and if it's above the number, then it's the kids who she's getting along with, your favorite kid today. And if it's below the number, it's the kids she's not getting along with. Like people say all the time to parents, which is your favorite kid? It depends on the day.
So explain us that, and as well the distinction between lunar and solar calendar, and how we can look at different things in different ways, like the Aztec and the Mayans used to do, etc.
Well, they have, there are many calendars that have been around for a long time.
Yes.
In fact, we were just talking about this on our weekly forecast about when April 1st came along. It's called April Fool's Day.
Yes.
And there are some people, some groups who felt insulted by that. But that was the start of the Roman calendar.
Yes.
And it was the beginning of spring. And it relates to the Fool in the tarot, which is the new birth, the rebirth, the starting something new.
That's right.
So we had such a doubling of that new energy in this particular April 1st, this April Fool's Day, because we had a new moon that day.
Yes.
We had the April 1st. And I think the moon was in Aries, of course, because that's the new moon.
That's right.
Is in the same sign as the sun. So we had this real opening for everything new. So that set the tone for April as a new beginning for a lot of people. And I'm seeing that everywhere.
Yeah.
That's right. And yes,
there's the lunar calendar, which is what the Chinese use, and those are based upon the position of Jupiter every year, because Jupiter after the sun is the biggest player.
Yes.
And it's very, very fast, goes through a sign in about 12 months. So where the Chinese, for instance, would always say you should marry someone with these certain aspects. Well, it was always 120 degrees from your Jupiter position. And the reason was it was stabilizing. Well, the Chinese don't want you changing your position. They want you to be stable. If you were a farmer, you should keep being a farmer. If you're an aristocrat, you should keep being an aristocrat. So you should marry someone who supports that.
Exactly.
They weren't into the squares. They want the trines. And for instance, we're in, I think, the year of the tiger right now, which is a ferocious year. In fact, they always say, my son is born in the year of the fire tiger, and they always say, oh my gosh, luckily this only happens once every 60 years. Because they're ferocious. They're like filled with fire. But the year after that, of course, is the rabbit year, which is the most gentlest and kindest, and but also prolific, which is why Lahni and I have so many kids and grandkids, I think, because we're both rabbits.
Born in the year of the rabbit.
You are both?
Yes.
Both born in the year of the rabbit. So.
5 children, 9 grandchildren.
Exactly.
Here we go. Very fertile.
Yeah, they just proliferate.
Rabbits.
So when do you publish the day planner and?
When does it come out?
Yeah, it comes out in October,
we
November.
send it to the
June.
printer in May, and we have so many dedicated subscribers. They're at the door waiting to order this in June. So I take pre-orders in June. It usually is back from the printer by the first week in July.
We have people who've been using it for 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cool.
And you take notes in the book?
This day planner, this was very important because the calendar looks like this. So there's not a lot of room for you to write things in here, birthdays, appointments, and things like that.
We made a bigger one.
We did increase the size so you could write a little bit in there, but it's so important to have all this detailed information in here. We didn't want to drop out any of that. So what we were able to do when we did the day planner was create the week by week. With the places where you can write your notes, your importance. And then it's annotated with a letter to the forecast that points out particularly interesting or difficult or exciting days, things that you should know that are going on. So, and all this artwork is Ralph's artwork.
Yeah.
It's beautiful in color.
You're an artist.
It's so beautiful in color.
Yes.
Yeah, he designed originally. You paint.
A marble card. Our first byline together was writing for Maquette magazine, which is
Art of sculpture.
the technical journal for sculpture magazine,
Oh, really?
about reviewing a marble carving program in Marble, Colorado.
Wow.
The town of
Very
Marble,
specific.
At 10,000 feet.
And we had it from the perspective of the artist versus the novice. And so we critiqued and explained about this marble carving. That was our first Bible.
It's a carving marble, especially when you're not, because I've done a lot of professional sculpture, but in steel and stainless steel, because that comes from my factory family. But working in marble is a really very spiritual experience because it's so fluid and it's this pure material, and it's really remarkable working in it. Even whether or not you're good at it, you're still just a remarkable material. It's transformative.
Yeah. I felt really bad when I was carving because I had no idea what I was doing. And people would come around and look at what he was doing and what I was doing. And it was out in the beautiful nature with tarps over and big Ingersoll Rand, compressors running with air hammers and chisels and stuff like that. And I finally said to him, I said, if this doesn't reveal itself by tomorrow, I'm just throwing in the towel, taking my blisters and going home. And the next day it turned into this interesting piece.
Beautiful piece.
That's called Cathedral. And
one of the sculptors came by and looked at the piece and said, break her hands. It was elegant. It was beautiful.
So you're really a Renaissance couple.
Yes.
So talking about wine, because we're going to move to your wine life now.
Yes.
Give us your thought about this tarot. Does it allow you to see the future?
Oh, beautiful. It's a beautiful wine.
I see this cab in my wine cellar.
Absolutely.
The 18th.
Maybe on your wine calendar too.
The 18th turned out to be a beautiful year. I smelled a bunch. And where in the valley is this? Where's the grapes from?
Right where we are.
That's what I thought. It felt like valley floor up with plenty of sun and a bit of shade in the afternoon. Yeah.
Rutherford and Santa Helena. You see how good they are, because then we're going to go to chronology of time.
And you've got that complexity that comes from all that iron soil and such. It's funny. I always think it's hysterical that iron soil makes the wine more complex. It makes it more sensitive rather than more muscular.
That's right.
It's the sulfur that makes it.
So when you get a tour with Ralph, you could see the level of details you're going to get.
And you're going to get a lot of history too, because he knows everything about everybody. I swear all the guys are big gossips, and they know everything that's going on in the whole valley. So if you want the whole story and all the details.
Because, I sit in on tastings all the time. So I'm sitting in the back of the room. And we have more wine educators in this part of the world than I think any place on the planet.
Yeah.
Because we get so many visitors. The great wines of France are incredible, but they're not as much into tourism because they've been shipping the wines out since the 1700s.
Yeah.
Where here is a whole bunch of people from all over the planet. And all the most famous people in Napa came from someplace else.
That's right.
They all came from someplace else. They all had a vision.
Like you.
Yeah, well, like
so
you.
Tell us, you made the move.
Yes.
I'll let you finish your sip, Ralph.
Thank you.
I know it's not too hard for you.
No, it's a beautiful wine.
You need your chronology.
You don't see, dear friends, it's about 6'4". So there's a lot of potential to absorb a lot of wine in that
not
body.
like me.
So tell us about, we have a few minutes and we want to make sure we cover your other books, your company, your tours, and what you've established here. Because we've talked about feng shui, talked about some of the other books, we've talked about the calendar. Now the wine country.
Right, exactly.
You came in for research and look at this, dear friends.
That was one of the older versions.
Dream tours of Napa and Sonoma.
That was my favorite edition. I wish we still did that one, but we have the newest one is this Tour Guides Napa Valley.
That was a favorite one of the guides too.
Yeah.
They loved that one.
And all the guides, all the concierges, they use this as the Bible. But we did this
Wine
one.
Survivor.
Yeah,
this
that was
is
a
a
game.
team building
A team thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
event. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
The idea was that how to put together an itinerary, that all the people in the group are going to like, because that's what tour guides do all the time. And it was really designed for like corporate groups. You have 2 or 3 groups come up. Each one is given a guide.
Yeah.
And they have to, and they're given the books, and they had to figure out where do they want to go? Who's going to put together the best day?
Negotiate.
And as they go, they actually score the wineries. What was their experience like at the wineries? Because winery experiences everything, and I mean the wine matters, but people will say, if you pour the wine with a story, the wine seems suddenly better, right?
Yeah.
So you scored, and at the end of the day, whoever wins a case of wine or wins a bottle of wine for everybody. Basically, it's just a chance for them to work together on something that's not business.
That's great.
And you get to
So
find out
that's the
things.
wine survivor.
Wine survivor.
I love that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Wow. And what else do you have here? Because
then-
there's a lot of books, dear friends.
And then this was the newer version of Dream Tours.
Yeah.
That was the combination. Then we also created a 2-1. Then I needed a skinny one. So this was Napa and Sonoma, a love affair maps. So it was mostly maps.
Wow.
Because
That's
people
how
get lost all the
publisher
time
talks.
because they're,
sure.
they're from
Page
suburbs.
count.
They don't know.
So that was before the Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even then, Google.
Well, but
Maps-
Google, it may be getting better now, but GPS isn't
No.
always real reliable in wine country, especially up in the mountains.
And they don't tell you what wineries nearby necessarily.
That's right.
Like if you come to Raymond, you
Yes.
don't know that Wheeler Farm's your neighbor.
That's right.
I mean, UPS says there they are. You don't know that they're across the road. You don't know that Kellum's your other neighbor. You don't know. I mean, the ranch, the mega complex is down the
Yeah.
road. Not that we put them in there, but
Yeah.
I mean, it helps you to know. Sometimes people go places and say, I didn't realize my favorite winery in the world is down the street from where
Yeah.
we're going. And back in the day, you could drop in.
That's right. This is amazing. And you've done all your materials with a beautiful
sorry, I didn't realize those were in there.
leaflet.
I grabbed them off my shelf real fast as we were coming out the door.
When
English, Spanish,
when
Italian, French, Portuguese, German, Arabic,
No,
Chinese,
no
I have
Farsi.
thought about
Russian.
No.
Ukrainian.
I forgot those
Every
were in there.
language is
Yeah.
there.
And he
Wow.
balks at learning Hungarian because there's 40 letters in the
That's right.
alphabet in Hungarian.
And I'm
so
not going to have that much
he
opportunity to
doesn't-
use
So
it.
tell us
Like that
about
idea.
not only all those books, but building a business, because a lot of our friends are looking for inspiration as well. A lot of people coming out of this pandemic have reassessed what they want to do, rightfully so.
yeah.
Some people want to do something different, and you really
and-
change your life 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell
well,
us about
that.
I
You know,
owe
you-
that
yeah.
to this logistics guy because I could not picture how we were going to make that move, but he made it all happen. But with the wine tour industry,
Mhm.
a lot of people have left the business after the
Yes, yeah.
pandemic. They said, you know
The
what?
fires and
I
the
found
pandemic.
something else to do, and it's less stress, and maybe I'll spend more time with the grandkids. So a lot of drivers have left, and it means that there's just sort of an elite group
Yeah.
of high-level drivers that
Great.
are left, and they've formed sort of a club where they refer out to
Yep.
each other because
Wow.
they
We're so dependent
know
on
that
each
the
other.
people are going to get the experience that they should be getting, because a lot of the drivers that have now left the industry went, as Ralph said earlier, to the same 5 or 10 wineries.
Yes.
And there's so much to see here at every level. And if you get to know your client, I mean, most of our work is people that are coming back,
That's it.
or people have referred somebody because they know that we have a level of interest in the client experience. That's why we love Raymond.
And you
so much.
drive.
And you're,
We drive
Thank you,
in
and thank you so much for saying that. And you drive with your guests separately or together?
not together. They're in the back seat. I talk over my shoulder all day long. I don't. A lot of time. I got to the point now. I spend so much time looking out the room outside. I don't know what they look like. They'll call on the phone. I recognize their voice. I don't remember the face, so I have to take photos.
Well, soon you won't have to drive. You'll use one of those
Yes.
self-driving
Autonomous.
cars,
There
and you'll
you
sit
go.
with the guests in the back.
But starting a business is actually a huge amount of fun because
Yes.
it's all creative. And as long as you're okay with recognizing that failure is always a possibility, you have to be a bit brave about it, but realize that you're going to learn stuff from doing that process. I think everyone should have a second business. They should have, if they have a job, they should have a business.
Yeah.
Because something in which they can be creative and something that they can learn. With us, what we did was we had run multiple businesses, consulting firms and things like
Yes.
that. I had run factories for many years. I mean,
Yeah.
big business. I mean, Fortune 500 type of stuff. Our customers were all the big companies.
Wow.
So, I mean, was under a lot of pressure. Not quite as much pressure when you're two people trying to scrape things together, but it's, a lot of pressure. So what would happen was when we got here, I worked with another company, for other companies for 2 years, basically doing the research for the book. And then I'd stop driving. I said, okay, we got the information from the books. You know, we have our
then
speaking
Lonnie
business.
said-
And then
Yes.
Lahni said, why are you so cranky? You're really cranky. It's like, I said, I miss my friends at the winery. I miss
the winemakers. I miss the other guys.
I miss my
the
clients.
clients.
you know.
I'm like, well, lucky for you, this book needs to be updated every year.
Honestly.
It was the first one.
So
we
you
had to
started the
update.
business based on updating the book.
To get me out,
Exactly.
to get me out of the house,
Exactly.
basically. To get me out of the house.
And
It's
you
time
have
to
to-
get him out of the house.
You
Right?
have to tell me about this
Oh, this is
wine. This is
beautiful.
gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you started that business, and now, so everyone, you can obviously give us the name of the company so everybody can book it.
It's Amici Tours,
Yes.
AMICIS. Amici is like the Latin word for friend,
Yes.
right? Which is my last name, DeAmicis.
Yeah,
And it has
Roman
the
name.
S on it because it's the old
Roman
Latin
spelling.
for sure.
spelling.
Spelling.
Plural.
And it basically says, and our slogan has always been, you have a friend in wine country. And the way we really market it, which is kind of unintentional, is I would give the book to all the concierges. What I didn't realize is most of them don't know that much. They don't. Some were here for years, but a lot of them, they were having to train people. So, and I would always give them to other tour guides because they'd refer people. But what happened was we became unintentional influencers.
Yes.
Because all of these people, what I included in the book was how do you create a tour? Because I'd been trained by this when I learned how to do it. And being an herbalist and being, you know, a designer, I had learned a lot about how people metabolize wine. You know, how much time do you have to have between wineries so they have a chance to get to the next winery and not fall on their face? You know, I mean,
That's
how
right.
how much water do they have to have? How much food do they have to have? When do they have to have food? So all this was built into our books.
What
so
to
all
expect
of these
in the tasting,
all these
you know?
concierges
Yes.
have used our book to train their teams. They used our videos to train their teams. And a lot of the companies have used our books. So what happens now when I go out to like market and meet a new concierge, they say, oh, you're Ralph.
Yes.
I read your book. So over the years, we've become well known enough that we can do about as much touring as we want to. Because with the publishing, there's only a certain number of hours in the day,
For sure.
and I don't want to be on the road all the time. And we're kind of selective with who we tour with. But we didn't realize that we were going to really shape the way in which people toured, because
Yeah.
it matters to you. I mean, if people go on the road, they don't need, and they get overly inebriated, and they get to the end of the day, can't remember where they went. What kind of experience is that? You want them
That's
to come
right.
here and understand the depth of the wine. You want them to listen to the people tell how they got here, because they're from all over the world. You want that depth. You want that personal experience, and that if you don't time it properly, they don't get that. And that was important to us.
And that's what you do so well with the maps
Yes.
and the love affairs, and obviously this is so much fun. The wine survivor as well. I mean, so many options. God.
Yeah.
So what is now that keeps inspiring you, and maybe in addition to this, the thing you haven't done that you wish to achieve?
Well, for a bunch of years, I was so pleased when you started doing the series. You had no idea, because we've been doing a series called Wine Country at Work
That's
about
right.
the industry for from 2012 to 2020, when we basically were locked in the house, and we worked on the newest books, which were the tour guides, Napa Valley and the Sonoma Valley Wine Country. So we actually had a whole year to work on that, which was great. But I really want to go back to doing more at the locations where you look about and talk about really the feng shui of wine country. You know, do you realize that the orientation of Napa and the orientation of Manhattan are the same?
Yeah.
It's that southeast to
That's
northwest.
right. That's right.
It's the same angle as the Forum in Rome. There's something about that angle that just concentrates the energy
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
certain
heavy
way.
stuff.
Wow.
You know, I mean,
Good point.
Napa's remarkable because we're north of the bay, and it's like Sonoma, the sun bounces off the bay, reflects up into the sky, so you get double sunshine. You know how grapes just love sunshine, and they're not that good at handling it. So the more you can give them, the happier they are. And
That's right.
there's very few places in the world that will do that.
Huh.
There's
Well
all
said.
these things about it. I mean, our very dry days, our cool nights. I mean, it's such a unique environment. You know, I mean, Sonoma is remarkable in its own way. I always say that Sonoma's like the older sister.
Yes.
You know, she's great in the garden and the kitchen. She's a nice looking girl. she's a lovely girl. But Napa's her little younger brother who's blonde, and
Gets
gets all the attention when he walks in the room.
Yeah.
And drives her crazy, but he loves her. He adores her as older sister.
I can see a new book coming out.
So, we have a new one out coming out, which is called Wine Country in Shorts, and it's all the short
In shorts?
all the stories I've been telling over
it's
my
a play
shoulders for
on
years.
words.
Not in
These
short.
stories.
No.
I said to him, the cover has to be him in shorts.
She's
Yeah.
the telling.
Yeah.
She comes up with the titles, but
Is he
Yeah.
shaving his legs on a regular basis?
No, but he's
maybe
cool.
her in
He's
shorts.
good.
Maybe her.
He's
But
good.
it's all the stories I've been telling about this region for years. So it's it's because the stories are what are remarkable personalities, in a remarkable place. How could I not have good stories?
That's right.
So
And the stories are so good that sometimes there are 2 or 3 versions of them.
That's it.
And
you
he
kind
wants
of
to tell them all.
weave them together to get one that really seems to it rings
Exactly.
well. It rings true.
Exactly.
So what is now your dream?
I'd like to get back to doing more of those shows. I've actually the other day I kind of decided I have to stop writing books. I've always had book projects going on. They take a lot of time, and she said you have to really go back and fine tune some of the older books and update them because we've about 30 different books and 5 or 6 in the
Wow.
herb section.
Big achievement.
Like 5 in the design section. They had to be fine tuned and marketed. But I'm really hoping to. I have this whole idea about chasing misogyny out of astrology.
Yeah.
And I was going to do a book about it, but I'm
Oof.
thinking about doing it as a series of videos because it has to do with, recognizing that,
Interesting.
it was so geared to out there in the world and the career, and they kind of looked at the personal life and said, well, that's just down there someplace. But the reality is that we live half our life there and half our life here. I mean, if they're not in balance, we're not happy people. So we've done a lot of work on that,
Balance.
So balance
On
is the word,
balance.
Isn't balance the story for everything?
Yeah,
6
For
great
everything?
varieties in chronology. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah,
It is
yes.
From
gorgeous.
Cabernet to Petit Syrah to Syrah to
Oh, it's-
Merlot to
oh,
Cab
wow.
Franc.
It's gorgeous.
This is intense, huh?
This is
And balance.
Mm.
Surprisingly, when you think about all those great varieties.
Mm.
So now, can you give a big message to everyone? You entrepreneurs, you move from one coast to the other. You understand the planets, you understand energy, you understand vibration, frequency, you understand, feng shui and the tango of it, being on the dance floor, the wine country, so many other things. What a great time we've had together. So maybe you have a big message to the world coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if we can help people live in their body, live in their environment, appreciate their body, appreciate their environment, and appreciate the gifts that we have every single day. That's really what we want.
Well said.
And I have something. People are, as things are getting better, people have a kind of a sense it's what's going to fall out of the sky on me next, because we've had these gotten smacked and smacked. But the reality is that the low point, and we had forecast this back in 2015, the low point was right at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
Astrologically, and even in terms of the solar cycle, that was the low point. And our financial cycle always follows the solar cycle. It's a 22-year cycle, but also it was the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter at the first degree of Aquarius. And whenever that happens, the whole economy kind of grinds to a halt for a little bit. But now the sun's energy is going up, and we're now moving into a point where Jupiter is in its ruling sign, Saturn in its ruling sign, and the energy is growing and getting better and better, and there's a greater sense of optimism, and people should not be afraid of that it really is getting better, and they should feel like that they can grow into that and not be afraid.
Well, that's exciting. So good news,
Good news.
exciting future.
Yep.
We should look at the planet before we invest and build
Always
businesses
a good idea.
and buy stocks, maybe.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But we want to thank you so much
Oh.
for attending our wonderful live, for learning more about your love story, your passion for each other, your love of the planets, and everything you do in the wine country. So congratulations to the both of you.
Thank you so much.
And dear friends, book your tours. You know what to do from now on. All the best.
Santé.
Santé.